Hello, I'm Dango Rose. Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. The Mountaineer brings you the latest news of the Peak-to-Peak region, in print, online, through our podcast, social media, and special publications. Now, listen in to the latest news of the area with our local journalists.
Hello, my name is Jamie Lammers, and welcome to a very special broadcast brought to you by the Mountaineer Podcast. This recording is the entirety of a meet and greet meeting hosted at the Caribou Room on Tuesday, April 8th, 2025 from 6 to 8 p.m. to discuss resuming mining in the Cross Caribou Mines. This recording is entirely unedited.
And/or comments for the end of the presentation. It would be greatly appreciated. Can I also remind you to take your cell phones to a silent status and an airplane mode, whatever's going to work. Everyone is, don't want to be that guy. So, there is a whiteboard in the back, and it has sticky notes for additional comments if you'd prefer to do it that way and be quite silent about it. There are also 3x5 cards that you can fill out with the same, and those will go in a little box that is conveniently labeled comments. The wooden facility behind the whiteboard is off limits. Please don't accidentally or incidentally touch or add a sticky note to that. That was actually came out of the Caribou Ranch recording studio and was one of the artifacts that the wonderful Caribou Room has inherited, I guess, in some way, shape, or form. As I said, the Q&A will have its opportunity for you to ask questions, but please regard protocols. The microphone in the back is for you to queue up for that purpose, and without much avail, I would like to introduce Mrs. Tawana Bain, who is the CEO of American Clean Resources Group, who has a certain option to begin management and ownership of the property which we all know and love upside the hill. And so without further ado, I'll ask Mrs. Tawana Bain to come forward. And you'll see me again shortly.
Thank you. It's a Tuesday, so the fact that you all came here after work, or if you weren't working and came out, it is extremely appreciated. I have to say, you rehearse this, you go it over in your head over and over again about what you're going to say and what you're going to do. And as I'm listening and I'm watching everything that we performed today, this truly is the epitome of the American dream. When I first started my entrepreneurial journey, fresh out of college, and then started my own firm, I was organizing these events. I never in a million years thought that I would be the CEO here speaking about them. But what I can tell you is I understand how important they are and how critical they are to have conversation. Because one thing we know in any relationship, when you don't communicate, things are misunderstood. And so I came here tonight, although much sooner than I thought I would. Thank you, Maggie. And one thing I will say is this: as a woman who has broken barriers, I'm not mad for her voicing her opinion. I believe in women's empowerment. I believe in women fighting for what they believe in. And whether or not she has all the facts, you cannot be mad at that. So I was supposed to unveil myself to you all, but it just wasn't supposed to be this soon. So a little bit about me. Peyton mentioned that I'm the CEO and chairwoman of ACRG. I took this position back in 2023, and I thought very long and hard about it. As I mentioned just a moment ago, when I first got started in the environmental space, it was in the stream restoration field. I did a lot of behind the scenes for a lot of the engineers in the major engineering firms who had certain consent decrees that they had to follow, or who were mandated by the EPA to ensure that our streams maintained their natural state or were rebuilt the correct way. And some of you may be familiar with Dave Roskin. I had no idea when people used to tell me when I was young that I was working for the Michael Jackson of the stream restoration community. I had no idea what that meant. And so all these years later, and I look around our country and everywhere that I've traveled, where our fish pools and vegetation and just the way that the streams are flowing are simply because he came up with a system. And he ensured that people adhered to that system. That system was adopted by many government agencies around this country to make sure that our streams maintain their natural state. And I share that because I'm no stranger to understanding that it is important if you're going to do the work to protect the land and the people. I understand that. I understand that very well. And so as we look about what we hope to do with Cross Caribou, I take all of those years of understanding my responsibility to the environment into this position as well. It says here, multipreneur with a background in social and environmental leadership. If you do choose to Google me, I will tell you I've spent a lot of time in a lot of different conversations. I believe in doing what's right. And sometimes those conversations have been in the social justice movement. I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. We were the ground zero place for Breonna Taylor. And I had a lot of people that were upset, black, white. And I had to bring them together to have conversations around community. And I'm proud of the things that we've been able to accomplish by having conversation. When it comes down to women, I acquired a publication, a 30-plus year publication in Louisville called Today's Woman, to give the everyday woman a voice. You know, not just those that are at the top of the food chain, but also those that are trying to figure out their way. So understanding problems and having tough conversations is not foreign to me. But what I can say, just being here tonight, I wasn't really sure what I was going to walk into. There's already been people that have walked up and given me a warm welcome. And listen, there may be some people here that will never agree or never be in support, but I do appreciate the respect. I really do. Committed to cleaning America while rebuilding America. One of the reasons that I first took this job is a project out in Millers, Nevada. It's in Esmeralda County. We control about 1,800 acres outright. And 1,183, I'm sorry, not 1,800. And what I really loved about the idea is there is about 16,000 acres that surrounds it. And there are tailings on this property that we have the opportunity to reprocess using only 10% of the energy that was traditionally used with fossil fuel by using renewable energy. And that's what the project, that's all it was supposed to be when I first took this role. And since then, we've reimagined how we can really fuel the American supply chain and manufacturing and bring jobs back outside of just processing tailings. So now we're looking at data center, Bitcoin mining, waste-to-energy solutions. I'm extremely excited that I get to help shape the future with this energy transition. And the Cross Caribou, as I mentioned, is we have an option. We have an option there to own and also control that. And I look forward to us figuring that out together as a community. All right, Mr. DJ. The mission at ACRG is pretty simple, and we hope that we're able to bring this here to Netherland. We're committed to clean energy, data infrastructure, and responsible mineral processing. It's really important that that word responsible landed in our mission statement. We wanted to support the United States supply chain resilience and our net zero. And I want to make this very clear. Sylvia, who's here, she just was snapping a picture of me, said something. And I said, you know what, you're right. She says, ask everybody in the room who has a cell phone. Is there anybody in here that does not have a cell phone? Raise your hand. We got one lone guy, doesn't have a cell phone. But I promise you, in order to have this, it takes mining. Because everything that we have is either mined or it's grown. And some would say, well, even if you grow it, you have the tractor trailer, where'd those parts come from? So the reality is mining is essential, but it's how you go about doing it that makes a difference. And we're not going to be perfect. I want to be very clear, right? We're not going to be perfect, but we have an opportunity to do something pretty amazing. And the feedback, whether good or bad, is going to help us shape into doing that. We can move on. Next slide. Our core principles. Environmental stewardship. To be honest, I was raised in my business career on the environment. So it would be crazy for me to accept a job and to do anything different than what I know. Economic prosperity. There is an abundance of opportunity up in this town with Cross Caribou. There's an abundance. I think back to before we had the cease and desist with DRMS, at how large our workforce was and how we were supporting the small business community. And it was really disappointing to see people lose their jobs. It was disappointing to see the small businesses that suffered because they didn't have the level of patronage that was there when the miners were shopping and patronizing their businesses. And then there's community engagement. So you all, up until now, have not heard from me. Not because we never intended to, we just didn't intend to so soon. And the reason is that because the deal between ACRG and the Cross Caribou is not finalized. And so we have been working on a plan, but once we kind of heard how people were feeling, we had to kind of pivot on the plans and say, we've got to go and we've got to talk to them. So the projects I mentioned just a moment ago, the project out in Millers is, we've given it a name, Greenway to Power. Again, Greenway is essential because we want it to be done in a green manner. And then hopefully very soon, we will acquire the Cross Caribou. Next slide, please. So why are we here? Just a little bit of levity here to close up a couple of myths. First of all, we had over 500 people that had some misunderstandings about what is happening up at the mine. So just a couple I just want to be very clear on. There is no resort being built and there is no helipad. We hike the mountains. We are not mining those. And there is no secret lair, just a cleanup crew that cares. But the biggest reason that we're here is to hear your voice. And the more feedback that you give, the better our plans can be. Because we're not going to do this without you. We're just not. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Peyton. And we're going to bring up a gentleman who has been very instrumental in filling out our permit application and can answer and walk you through some of the technical aspects of what we have going on.
Thank you, Tawana. And she will be back. I'm fond of this opportunity, of course, to let you know what this format is. So it's going to be very loose and casual, but we will follow with 3 presenters, and I'll introduce each at a time. And again, you'll have a chance to ask each one of these individuals questions that may pertain to your particular concern. So our friend here, Ben Langenfeld, has been a Colorado native all his life. He's a Colorado School of Mines graduate, and he has a genuine appreciation for the environment, the watersheds, the wonderful mountains, and this beautiful scenery that we hope no one takes for granted, and I think you're here because you definitely don't. Ben took a career path that brought him to DRMS because he has those concerns and that passion, and since leaving DRMS, he's been an active consultant in the services for the mining industries as a curator, stewardship to what matters to everyone, which is clean water and the proper way to leverage the resources that we've been given on this beautiful planet. So Ben, would you come forward please and begin your presentation? Thank you.
Thank you, Peyton. Thank you, everybody. We can go on to the next one, DJ. So one of the main things I'm going to do here this evening is just try to clear up some of the specifics. I've been through dozens and dozens and dozens of mining permits in the state of Colorado in my career. Everything from little teeny flagstone quarries just outside of Estes Park to huge mountainside mines, coal mines, metal mines, everything in between. I'm no stranger to the concerns I've seen, the comments, the feedback, And I'm very excited by the passion that the community has brought to this project. As I told Tawana and the staff at Grand Island Resources, there was nothing we've seen so far that isn't anything more than the sincere concern of the people who live here that we're doing the right thing and we're doing a good job. And that is our responsibility to demonstrate to you. I'm going to go over a few of the key components of this application, what's actually been applied for with the state, where it stands, and then give you guys a sense of the process. So if you wish to continue to participate, how long it takes, what to expect to see next, and things like that. One of the key things about any metal mine, particularly an underground one, whether it's in Boulder County or anywhere else, is the water quality that comes out of the mine. And a lot of information is available in the application. It has a long history. A lot of water has passed through that mine portal. A lot of water has been sampled. A lot of data has been gathered. Using that data, the folks at Grand Island Resources over the years worked hand in hand with the Division of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety to design and implement water management systems with one goal in mind: to make sure the water that left the mine could go out into Mother Nature without causing problems. There have been exceedances and problems, which, as anyone associated with industry knows, that's often the point where you find out where your holes are, where your gaps in your design are. And then you can work diligently, as they have, to fill those in. Over the course of that process, they've developed a water handling system that is safe and effective. It is already approved and operating. It has been for several years up at the Cross and Caribou Mines. And starting in late last year, the Colorado Division of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety put their foot down and told Grand Island Resources, it's been a long journey of lots of little pieces, lots of work, lots of designs, lots of approvals. But because the rules and the laws have evolved in the years since this mine started, it's high time everything you're responsible for, everything you're working on up there was brought together in one complete designated mining operation. They required that of this operator. That operator brought me on board to put that package together, and that is what we have submitted to the state of Colorado. One of the components of that application is that they wanted us to encompass the entirety of the responsibilities that they own into the permit area. Now, a lot of people have noticed that. I've been on the phone with a number of people in the past few weeks, very much concerned in the change in the size of the ground. The old mine, as far as I knew, was some little 10-acre thing up in the hills that they've hiked past. Now, all of a sudden, they see 200 acres. They get nervous, of course. Like I said, I've worked on a lot of mines. When a rock quarry goes from 10 acres to 200 acres, it's a big change. Well, this is an underground mine, for one, so it doesn't need to disturb very much ground to operate. And there's a whole host of ground on the surface that with a mine like this, we're responsible for, even though we're never going to touch it. But it's inside our area of control, and the state wants us to, on paper, take that responsibility, draw out that line with plenty of room around what we're already doing to make sure we can do things safely and securely. So if we'll go to the next slide. The key thing to understand about this permit is what it is and what it is not. The mine, as I said, is already here. The water treatment system is already here. The underground infrastructure, the surface disturbance, hoist buildings, core boxes. You go up there on a tour, you'll see all of the mine infrastructure that they're going to continue to use in the future. That's already there, that's approved. We're not changing any of that. We're not increasing the size or the scope of this mine. We're wrapping our arms around everything we're responsible for and including it in one big permit so that from here on out, it's one manageable operation for us and for the state of Colorado. One of the things that has come out of the communication between Grand Island Resources and some of the stakeholders in this region was a desire from the stakeholders for more transparency and more communication about what is the mine doing? What are the mine's plans for the future? What's going on up there? Well, as part of that process, we decided to put forward some of our future plans in this application, including a desire for us some point to put a mill on site. It's a future goal, and as thus, we've put it in the application conceptually. We've done this knowing that there will be a lot of questions, there will be a lot of feedback, but we embrace this opportunity to take all of that feedback and information in and put it to work. Use it to inform our designs and our decisions. Use those questions to ensure that we're putting forward a mill design and plan that is appropriate. I'll speak a little bit on the state's behalf here, that I know from experience that every future adjustment, revision, change to this operation that has to pass through their hands will also pass in front of the stakeholders. They will run this process in front of the public over and over and over, because as government regulators, that's their job. The thing they like least in the world is for someone to think they're doing their job in the dark. And so they will put our information out front and center. To that end, one of the things you'll notice as the process goes forward is that everything is a public file. You'll get to find all my typos, every single one. You'll get to go through every single thing I submit to the state on behalf of this company. You will see every letter that the state sends to me, and you can see every comment provided by your neighbors. You can go into the file right now and see every single comment that you have all submitted. That's all there as part of the public record. No secrets, nothing hidden, total transparency. Next, please. One of the things I want to sort of wrap up here is to take a look at the idea of water, because we've gotten some very good comments from a lot of people, particularly the city of Boulder, the town of Netherland, Boulder County Open Space, diving down into the specifics of the water handling system up here and their concerns for the water supply in this area. I think it's very important to understand that we are held to two very important standards. One, the Division of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety holds all of our groundwater to standards established by the Clean Water Act and the Water Quality Control Commission here in Colorado. So you have one state agency that all they're going to do on the waterfront, what they will do is keep track of the water beneath the ground. This includes the potential for water to pass through our operation, go underground, and go to other underground operations. We have to address and demonstrate that we are not going to be altering our neighbors' water supplies, whether it's quality or quantity. So an entire huge component of that regulation structure of the things those experts at DRMS will look at is that groundwater. Then on a whole other front, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment regulates every drop of water that comes off the surface of our mine into the stream. We already have a water quality permit. We have to fill out sampling jars, take them to a lab, test them, make sure our water handling system is effective, make sure the water that we discharge into Coontrack Creek is clean, meets standards. I will say this, having worked on coal mines and metal mines that really struggle to meet water quality standards, this is some of the best run and cleanest water coming out of a mine I've seen in my 9 on 20 years of looking at this data. Part of it's just a natural blessing. The ore, the rock that they're working with here, it doesn't have the potential to produce the heavy metals that you might assume you'd get with underground mines. Even though we know that, even though that we benefit from that, as part of the permit, we will have to conduct regular sampling and testing of all of the rock that comes out of the mine to make sure we continue to have a water handling system that meets or exceeds the requirements. One of the things that I'm particularly proud of in this application, we came up here with the staff up at the mine, we walked around, we said, hey, let's take some initial steps and propose some designs to get this system out of the frost, out of the weather, make it more robust, less dependent on electricity, more things to strengthen the system, and they were all game for it, 100% on board. Over and over, I've been pleased with the fact that when we brought forward pro-environmental techniques and standards and suggestions, they've embraced them and looked for ways to incorporate them into their operation, which is really a wonderful thing to see. Next, please. One of the fundamental misunderstandings, I would say, about mining in the modern world, particularly in Colorado, is maybe a sense from some people that it hasn't changed, that it's all about get the minerals and run, get your gold and run, forget the environment. Well, I can tell you that's far from the truth. From my earliest days as a mining engineer at the Colorado School of Mines, over and over and over, it has been, I have seen where the industry has embraced environmental stewardship, embraced environmental protection and improvement. And one of the big ways it's embraced that is look to use its knowledge, its techniques, and its technologies to go back and clean up the mistakes of the past. If you're hiked and biked your way around Colorado high country, you've seen orange-stained piles, you've seen tan rock sitting on slopes, you've gone by creeks. It's a funny color. All of the old gold rush mining that was done throughout this state was done without any care for the environment, and in many places left a mess. And now we have the technology and the capability to do something about that. One of the goals of our mill that we hope to have here in the future is to provide a place where we can take that old pre-law waste, get it off the ground, get it cleaned up, and get it out of here so that we improve the environment up here. One of the simplest ways I like to look at it is a company like Grand Island Resources is a huge landowner up here. It has a massive amount of ground that right now has a lot of old mine waste on it from before they were ever here. Nobody wants to own that but a mining company. But a mining company can clean it up, can make it better, and leave behind property that's usable, enjoyable for future generations. And for me, as a mining engineer, I take a great amount of satisfaction in that and work really hard every day to make that kind of stewardship and environmental improvement a reality. Next, please. With that, I'm going to hand it back to you, Peggy. Thank you.
The Caribou Mine has a distinct history. It was opened in 1869, and it's changed hands many times. But things in the mining industry require miners, engineers, prospectors, metallurgists, and attorneys. So our next guest is going to be bringing us a conversation regarding the legal elements surrounding the industry and what is required. And a lot of that has to do with compliance with the items that Ben just addressed for us. In a historical sense, the foundation of Caribou had a notable owner named Robert Dunn. And for those of you familiar with FinTech in the old age, that is Dun & Bradstreet, Robert Dunn. And of course, he had an attorney, as all mining companies do. His attorney, Chester C. Arthur, eventually became president of the United States. So there's a lot of rich history here, and it incorporates, as I said, all legal matters. Counselor Henderson is a well-regarded, highly respected legal mind in the industry, and his career spans almost 5 decades. He has been instrumental in many of the prior filing, permitting, and legal requirements that was eventually responsible for expanding the mining operations as to where they are today. So John, if you'll come up, please, and bring the audience your expertise.
Tom Hendricks always claimed that he was a small miner, which these days is defined as a miner who has 4 or fewer attorneys at any given time. Tom and I worked together on this project for approximately 42 years, including all the land assembly at Caribou. I have brought up here one of my oldest maps of what we did in this district. Basically, the patented ground, the ground that we have fee title to, is scattered over approximately 2.5 square miles at Caribou. It comprises, depending on how you count them, of probably 129 patented properties, that is supplemented by 105 federal unpatented mining claims. Currently, and in the past, we have not operated on the federal lands. We try to restrict our operations to the patented grounds. Ultimately, if we do drilling operations, exploration operations on the Forest Service land, that requires a plan of operations. We once had one of those for drilling over by Pomeroy Mountain, but unfortunately by the time we got the permit, which was a lengthy delay, the money had expired. So Tom was not always well funded, but he was a pioneer. Those who knew Tom Hendricks knew how much respect he had for the environment. Over the years, our requirements for water quality up at the mine have gotten more and more stringent. We're very high in the range, and we're held to what are called aquatic life standards, which is measured in a lot of components, part per million, part per billion ranges, which can be very difficult. Tom originally conceived using 1970s technology, settling ponds, which he lined to maintain a pH. We could drop out metallic microsediments. He then put in a second stage of passive treatment, which was a zeolite flume. Zeolite is used to make various cat litters and other assorted things. And the third stage of passive treatment Tom was going to try, and we did try, was to take the water after it had gone through the settling ponds and the liming and zeolite and put it into a marsh or bog environment with aquatic marsh plants to further fix any microcontaminants that might still be in the water. State wouldn't let us do that unless we could build a marsh that was fully contained with a defined discharge point. But here's an important point that a lot of people don't know, and that is Tom Hendricks knew very well that when we went to active operations, we were going to need to put in an active treatment system to meet these exceedingly tough environmental standards. And at one point up there, we even had a prototype unit that was on site that sat there for 2 years because there was never a budget to install. Grand Island has now come in and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on an active treatment system and has been totally effective in meeting those very stringent standards now for several years as required by the state. In addition to the laboratory testing that takes place every month, we have to also submit to what's called wet testing. Most of you don't know what that is. I'll give you a short synopsis. Wet testing, you have to take your discharge water and at various dilutions of that water, 100% mine water, 75, 50, 25, they introduce into that water invertebrate water fleas and newly hatched fathead minnows. And then they monitor, which are very delicate, much more delicate than trout. And then they monitor any mortality in that wet testing. So this water goes through multiple tests on extremely stringent standards. You know, I've been listening as to some of the questions that have been asked and some of the comments made publicly, so I thought I would get into a couple things in my remaining minute or two here. I put the land map up here, and a lot of people have asked questions about public access to the lands. We control fee titles to approximately, about 300 acres, Rich, 400 acres of patented land. We have never restricted public access on that land other than our operational areas where we might be drilling. We have invited hikers, campers, people park on our land up there at the Caribou town site. No, there's not going to be a giant open pit mine. We may remove some of the dumps if they have suitable waste material to be moved, which is a cleanup act. We're not going to be stripping the land or having an open pit mine on the 204 acres that simply encompasses much of the patented land we've got. A couple other short comments I wanted to make because there's been a lot of comment about publicly. Currently, there are no mine tailings up at the mine. There are no tailings ponds up at the mine. There's no mill processing currently going on at the mine. But I wanted to mention there's a very, very good reason why in the future we should do that, because people have raised questions about truck traffic. So I brought my usual illustrative exhibits. I have here two types of ore from the mine. This is from the rare metals vein in the Cross mine. This is from the Apache vein as it crosses from the Cross mine proper into the quartz monzonite intrusive at the bottom of the town site. Tom actually milled ore in Boulder for several years in the early 1980s, probably 79 to about 82, 83 for the most part. The reason you mill at the mine is very simple. These are easy milling ores. What does that mean? It means you don't need to heat them or roast them. You don't need to use mercury. You don't need to use cyanide. You do not need to change the chemical character of the rock. The mill in Boulder was a mechanical separation. And what happens, the ores up at Caribou concentrate on what's called an 18 or 19 to 1 ratio. In other words, only 1 part out of 20 or 1 part out of 19 is the actual concentrate. The other part is quartz seed. So when you have a mill, what you are looking for is the concentrate. This is what gets shipped to a smelter. This is where the metallics are. And there's 18 or 19 parts of this. For some of the cross mine ores, it was like a 50 to 1 concentration ratio. So why would you send 20 trucks going all over the state or through town when you can send 1 truck every couple days of valuable concentrate? So it's really good for the company to construct a mill and really good for the community for traffic and other reasons. Otherwise, all you're doing is transporting a bunch of quartz sand, which is what these turn into when they're milled across the state. So when Tom ran the mill in Boulder, I'll give you the 1-minute explanation of how it worked. Tom used 3 chemicals at the mill. Soda ash to adjust pH. Sodium xanthate is the flotation agent that caused the metals to float on bubbles. And he used a dripped pine oil. It's 1920s technology. It worked great in these ores. We don't need to alter it chemically. We don't need to do anything weird. And it makes sense to do it as close as possible to where you mine it, so it doesn't bankrupt you chasing ore all over the state or the country and not sending a whole lot of traffic out onto the roads. But basically, in a mechanical separation process like that, it was pretty simple. Primary crushing to get water, the rock to a reasonable size. Secondary crushing to get it to a smaller size such that it could be introduced into a rotating ball mill, which was filled with iron balls that looked like cannonballs. They break down the ore into a slurry. Slurry goes into flotation tanks where the metallics actually float to the top. The heaviest part floats to the top on bubbles. There's a squeegeer paddle that takes those off. They go to a place where they're settled and concentrated, and then through a filter press to dry. When that is done, you end up with concentrate. That's a saleable product. So the mill has not been finally planned yet. That will be coming along. They'll probably run bench testings on the most effective way to do it. But when Tom was running the mill in Boulder, it was basically 1920s technology. Very simple, easy milling ores, no chemical alteration, no cyanide, no mercury, none of that. I keep hearing it, so I thought I would come up and say it. In re-emphasizing, we have no plans to exclude the public, Nederland residents, or otherwise from utilizing the large land position which we've got on top of the hill. As far as I'm concerned, that's going to remain as it always was. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Councilor. I did promise Tawana would be back up, so Ms. Tawana Bain back up here to introduce her guest, Mr. John Singer of the Boulder Chamber. I apologize. Riley McAllister may be known very well to all the residents in Nederland. He lives right in the middle of Nederland, and I consider him a really good guy and fun to hang out with. But he's also the person in charge of all safety. He's adherent to a lot of other issues, but it's his final responsibility to be in charge of the safety of the personnel, the environment, and that environment, as Mr. Henderson just acknowledged, includes tourists, hikers, skiers, four-wheel drive enthusiasts that connect to the 505, and that beautiful meadow that we're all accustomed to admiring, terrific views of the Front Range, and then of course the back door of the Rocky Mountain National Park. So I'm going to ask Riley McAllister to come and give us a few levels of understanding of how he operates and what that safety and those standards are all about. And I apologize, Riley.
All right, and for those who do not know me, my name is Riley McAllister. I've lived up here in town for just going on 6 years now, working with the mine. I have the honor to work with a hero and a mentor, Tom Hendricks. When I got involved with the project, it was a ragtag operation. I think we had 3 people on site. We were lining the ponds every day, shoveling snow by hand, and barely getting it up to site whenever we could. Tom would often show up late to work 2 hours because he would take the time to plow out every single person on Caribou Drive. He did it without ask, without need, without any accreditation behind it. He would show up and he said, "I was plowing," and that's just how it went. Anyone who knew Tom knew he was a light to this town, whether it's his stories, the mine tours, the history, the public relations, escapades on Caribou Hill that we won't get into, or just he was an all-around good guy. He would give the shirt off his back to anyone that he would meet, anyone that needed it, and he would talk to anyone about anything. He would always like to learn. Never overshare his statement, but when someone asked their opinion, or his opinion, he would give it. I pride myself by keeping his integrity for the community, the safety aspect, and also the public relations behind it. Since we've worked together with the community, and since Tom's passing, we've made a pride to ourselves to help any stranded vehicle on Caribou Road, winter or summer. It does happen. Just yesterday, we helped another individual out who got stuck on a Prius that shouldn't have been up there in a Prius. But we do pride ourselves for going out of our way to help the community, to be open and honest. We offer mine tours for whoever want to come up, whoever are interested. Now, granted, we may have to schedule for days where there's no operations or we can get a good group together. But we pride ourselves with that. And going forward, on the health and safety aspect, which is my job at the mine, MSHA, if anyone's familiar with it, is OSHA for mining. We are held under very, very stringent CFR regulations that we are inspected from head to toe every 3 months. Every quarter, we have inspectors go through every extension cord, every bolt, every rock, every container, fire extinguisher, you name it. And in the past 30 months, we have not received a single violation. So we take pride in that because that is unprecedented in any mining out there. We've been 20,000 man hours without having a single lost time or injury. And to me personally, it's just throwing out numbers to a lot of people, but to me that is 20,000 man hours where people got to go home in the same condition they came to work, if not better. That's what Tom was priding himself for. Now, that's what we're going to keep doing. We won't stop. So please tell us how we can help more. Tell us how we can get better. And if you go one more slide, please. A lot of our crew is also involved with Front Range Mine Rescue. So if someone in the western slope finds himself underground where they don't want to be in a bad scenario, they actually dispatch members of our team to go with Rocky Mountain Front Range Mine Rescue and other rescue teams to then go help and all over the state. Tom was a big proprietor. We take massive pride in extensive training and being there when we need to drop everything and to run head first to help people. That it doesn't matter who they are. We're here to help people. So that's my 2-minute spiel. I just want to thank everyone for being here and thank you for honoring the memory of Tom.
There's a few other dedicated people that are on the labor force, and I'd like to point them out. JP Brewer is sitting right here. He's our mine boss. If you'll stand up, JP. And up in the rafters is Scott Bass. Probably one of the hardest working people I know. But all these people put their lifetime and effort into a true dedication to what's there. And I think to your point, it was 80 rescues last year.
87.
87 rescues. These are people that were truly rescued and brought down safely from a sure mishap. As I said once before, I'll introduce CEO Mrs. Tawana Bain and her friend John Singer.
Thank you, Peyton. You can go ahead and move to the next slide. I am also going to cut my remarks because we're running a little over. We really wanted to dedicate a full hour for Q&A. And so with that, there's just a few things that I do want you all to know. You know, we rolled out the Caribou Promise because we want to make sure that you understand these are promises that we're making and not empty ones. And so there will be a website that goes up that you all can continually provide your feedback to us. We'll be designating a local liaison from the ACRG team that will be able to, we'll actually have her email address up at the end where you can reach out to her directly. Her name is Morgan Saunders. And regular open houses. We want you to come up, we want you to take tours, we want to keep the conversation going. With that, there has also been the discussion of a proposed advisory group made up of residents, business owners, as well as ACRG team, GIR team members. And so if there are those of you here or know others that would be a good fit for that or interested, please let us know. There's, I believe, a sign-in sheet and also index cards in the back where you can do that. Next slide. Transparency and collaboration. I'm proud to stand here today with ACRG. We just became a member of the Boulder Chamber of Commerce, and I actually asked Jonathan Singer and Jonathan Fay have just been amazing. Actually came to visit me in Louisville. At least John did. Right now he's got a foot that I think he's getting healed. But they've been tremendous over the last couple of years, helping me learn the lay of the land, getting to know different players, for when the time was right to get to know all of you. And so with that, I'd like to bring Jonathan up before we kick off Q&A.
Thank you, Tawana. I'm Jonathan Singer. I'm the Senior Director of Policy Programs at the Boulder Chamber. And I wish I had known about Riley Services because I used to actually work for the county doing, I was entrusted with protecting the safety of our kids doing child protective services. And I couldn't even afford a Prius. I was in a Corolla at the time going up Caribou. A whole other story. I'm grateful to the Sheriff's Office for fishing me out a couple of times. So I'm going to be also very brief in my remarks right now. After I left my work doing child welfare, I actually ran for office and came from Longmont, where we were dealing with another extractive industry. And I will tell you, the difference is night and day. Because what we were dealing with in Longmont in 2012 was oil and gas who came into our community and shirked the responsibility of reclamation and cleaning up and doing the kinds of responsible work that needs to happen in order to maintain a community and maintain not only the safety of the community, but also a solid business environment. Because at the Boulder Chamber, we're the second biggest chamber in the state. We're not just responsible for one business, but we're responsible for a healthy business ecosystem that serves people. So what does that mean and why am I here? When I ran for office, I said in politics we should start where we agree and see how far we get. I actually don't want to do that today. I want to hear your concerns. I want to hear where those pain points and where those friction points are going to be, because if we can engage on those today, then we can start to find those points of agreement and understand each other better. Like I said, 15 years ago, I wish that is what had happened, because what we did at the state legislature is we worked to actually create responsibility in the oil and gas industry by making sure we have the right kind of inspectors, by making sure that the water and air that crosses those political boundaries are actually keeping people safe. This is the kind of engagement that I wish we had had, and so I can't wait to hear the kinds of conversations that we're about to embark on. And I'm going to close on this. I'm not going anywhere. This is my community. I have lived in Boulder County since 1993. I know that seems like 5 years ago. Turns out it's not. And with that, I'm going to be here day after day with my kids, with my family, to ensure that we have the same quality of life that we have today, tomorrow, the next day, and 10 years from today. So let's embark on that journey together, and I look forward to moving forward in this process with all of you. We'll take it from there.
So I said in my opening, we will begin a Q&A now. We have a microphone in the back. You can help yourself to that microphone or be acknowledged in the audience if you feel you have voice enough. Please, when you are bringing your questions forward, one at a time, remain standing if you have another question or a follow-up comment, but please just one at a time. And you may direct your questions to any one of our panelists who will be here. And I'm going to pass the microphone over to the group here, and I welcome the Q&A session.
Test. Hi. I actually have two questions, if that's allowed. So one is for the entire room. How many people have heard the word mill before tonight? Raise your hand. Oh, not me. Who's heard the word mill before tonight? How many people? Okay, so 1% knew that there was a mill coming? Okay, I did not know. I actually didn't know about this meeting until today. Also, which makes me a little bit sad. Second question, how much gold that you mine ends up in a cell phone? And do you ship it to China to make cell phones? Like, how much gold does a cell phone require? Or a battery for an electric car? Or, okay.
It's enough, ma'am, to make gold valuable at $3,000 an ounce.
I understand that it is profitable.
It's not a matter that it's profitable, ma'am. It's a matter that it's in high demand. That's what determines its value.
Demand. Thank you.
Ma'am.
So market.
Demand.
Yeah, the market.
No.
We're talking about market answers.
No, ma'am, I'm talking.
I wanted to know about the mill. That actually,
What specifically can we answer for you about the mill?
this is the first time I've heard about a mill being put up in our upstream of our water source.
What is it that we can answer for you specifically?
How much regulation is going to have to be passed to make that a possibility in our community? I mean, it's an unknown, but
Well, yeah, it is.
because
It's
that may be an unknown in today's world, and that concerns me. We don't know how much regulation will be required to mill minerals in this country in 2 years, 4 years. How about when your kids get out of high school? How about when they go to college? How much? We just can't really know that.
To answer the question on just a regulation about the mill, there are, in the state of Colorado, at least half a dozen major metal mills currently functioning. Some are very well known, some are not so well known. For example, there is one down in Gunnison right now that is processing waste rock, using flotation, doing exactly what's proposed here, and cleaning up mine waste piles in the high country. Mills of this type are regulated all by the Division of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety, the same agency that regulates the rest of the mine. In general, they're regulating two big things. One, they're regulating the rock that comes in and out, right? Making sure that doesn't produce any byproducts or products that have environmental danger or damage to the community, and any kind of other inputs. As John talked about, some mills historically have had to use mercury. We don't have to do that here, it's not necessary. But anything like that at all that comes into the mill to be used in processing, even if something as simple as sands and inert clays that are used as part of pH maintenance. All of these things are strictly regulated by the same state regulators as the actual rock that comes in and out. There isn't a mill in the state of Colorado that is unregulated. They all go through a rigorous review process and a careful technical review. The rules and the regulations are updated and revised by the legislature and by the Mineland Reclamation Board that the law empowers to make those regulations on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, the reason we had to apply for a designated mining operation conversion was because the rules and regulations had evolved in the state of Colorado, and the state was requiring our operation, like everybody else, to update their plans, update their procedures, and show to the state once again that we are still meeting and exceeding the highest standards.
By the way, there were historically approximately 112 different mills in Boulder County. Most of those are recounted in pictures in a book by Harrison Cobb called Prospecting Our Past. Some of those mills,
about historical mills,
and that's why the water sucks in Boulder. So,
well, back in the day, including some of the mills along Boulder
Creek.
Creek.
Turn it over to another question instead of continuing on the same topic, and also there are people wanting another question.
Well, we're certainly going to allow them to be answered. But the old mills 100 years ago were not subject to environmental regulations. Now they're heavily regulated.
Next question.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Kelly, and I really appreciated the discussion that we had, your presentations. I'm a retired 40 years environmental engineer, so I can relate to what you said. I have a couple of questions. One has to do with MSHA. I hear they're not being funded any longer. That the current administration wants to do away with MSHA. Is that correct? Number one. And then number two, I'd like to hear a little about air emissions. We heard about water, want to hear about air.
I'll go ahead and just answer the first. I am not aware of MSHA not being funded, and literally just today, MSHA came and did a check-in with us. So they are still operating and doing their job.
Keep track of that, because that question will come up again. And then the other question about air was, do you have scrubbers in place? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. In terms of air emissions in a mine like this, one of the nice things about it is because it has line power, we don't have to run around with like diesel generators on the ground, which gets to your question about scrubbers. That's usually what those are part of, are scrubbers of those exhaust emissions. So we don't have that problem to start with, so we won't need them. But air emissions at a site like this are strictly regulated by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. There is an entire special dust permit which has particulate emissions limits that are tied to the activity on site. And they come out and they inspect and they insist on seeing records. How much dirt did you move? How much ground did you move? How much equipment did you run? And check that we were actually abiding by our permits.
What are the pollutants of concern associated with your air discharges?
The only pollutants of concern for a mine like this tend to be the particulate matter from rock driving around on, as you've seen, you send trucks and equipment on dirt roads and dirt ground, you can generate a lot of dust. And that is carefully regulated by the state. So that is the primary thing they will regulate. But they will review everything we are proposing to do, and they will tell us what is being regulated, what your limits are, and what they expect us to abide by.
Next question.
Hi, Katie, Netherland resident. I believe the reason you guys are here tonight is for transparency and clarity. Now, if you didn't know the history of the mine, and you just were plopped down here tonight and you saw this presentation, who else would think they were mining salt and pepper? Like, where in this presentation was there like specific metals listed taking out and remaining? Like, if I was watching this, I was wondering if you could like show the slide of like the purpose of this mine. I'd like to see it. Because I saw a lot of stuff like environmental, this and that, but like, is there a slide that shows me what you're taking out and what is remaining? Like metals, actual metals on the screen.
Absolutely fair question. We designed today's presentation based on the concerns that the community submitted to DRMS. However, we are happy to provide that information to you, and that is something that you most certainly can email us and we will provide. But tonight's presentation specifically was designed to address the opposed and most of the things that people, or concerns, and most of what came through from a concern perspective was water quality, questions as it related to the mill, and some of the other items that I mentioned earlier that just, were a complete misunderstanding. So, but if it is something that you are interested in, we do have the comment cards in the back. Please put down your information, and we're happy to provide to you what's being mined and how it's being mined.
Yeah, because I think we all want to know what is being mined, right? There should be a slide up here that should be number one.
The concentrate I showed you, which is the black powder there, the principal metals are silver, gold, lead, zinc, and copper. Those are constituents of most of the veins. Netherland itself is surrounded by literally hundreds of millions of tons of mineralized ground and dozens, if not hundreds, of mines, because it's in the heart of the Colorado mineral belt. These veins, it's gold, silver, lead, zinc, copper. Back in the old days, when they first mined Caribou up on the top of Caribou Hill, it was primarily regarded as a silver mine, because the silver then, they were mining at a minimum grade of 50 ounces per ton of silver. There was gold, but it was maybe only 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, but gold was priced at only $20. Now gold is the dominant economic mineral at Cross Caribou.
Okay, then I think we all deserve like a good slide of a pie chart of this, right? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello there. Following up on her question regarding transparency, I believe that the majority of the community of Netherland is here because they don't know really any of you. And so thank you for hosting this PR event to showcase yourself, Miss Tana Bain. And so I just have a couple questions that, again, go within the line of transparency. And so I'm curious, what is your economic standpoint with GIR, and how much did you buy in for your place within the Cross Caribou Mine? And also, what is your relationship with Alfred Garrett's?
Sure. So first, let me start with ACRG has not yet purchased the mine. We entered into a definitive purchase agreement back in 2022. And as it relates to Alfred Garrett's, he is my other half. He has asked, because he is not an operator, tap the woman in his life to lead the charge. And so that is why I am the face of American Clean Resources Group. And one thing that I will say about Mr. Garrett's, people can have a lot to say, but I have a lot of respect for a man that says you can do a better job than I can.
Thanks, and I just have one follow-up question.
Sure.
So with ACIG, or American Clean Resource, I'm sorry, I don't remember your acronym. Aside from the one project of which you mentioned in Nevada, what other mines have you been affiliated with, and where can we see the work of what you've actually done? And when you said, don't Google me, why can't we? If everything should be transparent and you should have everything front and center for us all to see.
Are you referring to me responding to Maggie's post?
You said it this morning. You said it at the beginning of this
don't. So I wanted to meet her in person. She can Google me. That's fine. But I would rather meet her and have it face to face, because we're all human, right? And she has her views and I have my views, but we're never going to solve them if we're only discussing them on social media. So I'm here tonight so that I could get to know you all, and so that we can have conversations. And like I mentioned, we're a work in progress. We're not going to do everything right. We're not going to be perfect. but I can only be as good as the feedback that I get.
What is the website of which you'll be hosting all information moving forward regarding your processes and plans with the mine?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the beginning of that.
What is the website of which you referred to earlier, of which you will be transparent in all of your ongoings with work further in the mine? We'd like to have that. I'm sure everyone here would like to have that front and center. That should be your QR code number 1.
So, as I also mentioned, this was expedited because we had to come. So a lot of the things that we would have traditionally done, like establishing the website first, having a brochure, we didn't have time. That wasn't what was more important.
Because you were threatened by Maggie Hendricks?
No, I don't think that I was threatened. I think she invited us for a conversation. She shared what her concerns were, and we needed to respond. Ignoring her would have been irresponsible. And so that's why we're here. But to answer your question, we do intend to launch the website and provide all of this information for you. I don't come with empty promises. And I can certainly see that there is something that you're upset about, but I will be here. And if you would like to talk after everyone goes, I'm happy to sit and break bread with you and continue the conversation.
I'll be here for a long time.
And that's okay.
And it should be.
It
John
is.
Henderson, you're dead to me, and the rest of you guys, wise on up, but thanks for coming to town.
Okay, well, thank you.
Wow.
Any additional questions?
Hello, I'm Jill Drees, and I run the Wild Bear Nature Center. And so that is the group that preserved Mud Lake and now Caribou Ranch. There's, I don't know, almost 3,000 acres of preserved land. And our volunteers removed 30 tons of trash from that land. 30 tons is a lot of trash, by the way. And there's tungsten mining pits all through that land. Our original site had a mine subsidence occur. We, on our building pad of 6 foot by 8 foot, 30 foot deep subsidence hole from mining, from tungsten mining. And so there's a lot of history in this community, you know, for maybe, you know, just the history of mining has not been kind to nature. And that's who I am. I'm here representing nature. Okay, maybe that's hippie to you, but to me, it's the future. It's the future for children. It's the future. So my question to you, because I haven't met any of you, and I'm excited, I wanted to say thank you for that presentation. Thank you for taking the time to make that presentation, to talk with the community. I hope it's the first one of many, as you stated. But my question is, any responsible corporation, especially when you're taking from nature, gives back as social responsibility, environmental responsibility, gives a percentage back to those who are doing right by nature. Because I'm going to assume that you're probably going to make a pretty great profit out of this great adventure you're on. And so as a partner to you, I would hope that we can work together to make sure the good stuff occurs. And so I'm asking you, what is the percentage you're going to give back in social responsibility and environmental responsibility back to the community to make taking from nature right?
And can you tell me your name again?
Jill Drees.
Jill, first of all, thank you. Thank you for saying thank you. Thank you for being here. Second, what I will tell you is, as of today, I don't know that percentage. And I'm not going to just shoot something out for the sake of...
Is there one?
But this is what I will tell you.
Because I haven't seen anything.
This is what I will tell you. This company has not been revenue positive.
Mm-hmm.
And over the course of the last, 5 or 6 years, they've invested over $20 million in this community. They have been significant sponsors of Frozen Dead Man Day. Did I get that right? Frozen Dead Guy Day. They have rehabbed the cemetery that is also recognizes Tom Hendricks. They have invested in providing artifacts to various museums and sponsored and hosted a number of other events. I share that because you're right. If this is done right, and responsibly, this stands to be a massive economic impact, not just for the company, but for the community. And if a company not generating revenue invested $20 million back into a community, I can only imagine what we will do once we are thriving. And so I don't have the answer just yet, but as I shared with you all earlier, I was brought up on community engagement and environmental rights. So a part of our corporate social responsibility plan, I will be very involved in the development of that. And I'm a giver. I mean, that's just who I am. And so I don't envision us thriving while our community suffers. That will not happen under my watch.
Thank you. And I just invite you. I invite you all to come across the street soon and find out.
I believe I'll be there in the morning. I have a meeting to come visit in the morning.
Right across the street at the Nature Center. You have a meeting there.
I do. Not that one?
Well, it's right here.
Okay. Well, I have a meeting 9 a.m. tomorrow.
It's right here. I'm talking about the new Nature Center. It's right here across the street.
Okay.
I'm asking all of you, to come and meet with me and talk to me about how you plan to give back to nature, considering the fact that you're actually going to make a lot of money from nature. Okay, that's all I have to say. I invite you. I will give you my card, and I would hope that we can talk about that, because we can't just be making money. We got to be thinking about social and environmental responsibility where you are making money from nature. Period.
Thank you.
I'm a little taller. I'm Eric Abramson. I live about 3 miles below you on Caribou Road. I've spent time underground in 5 states. And talking about exploitation, the mining industry is an exploited environment, both for nature, for employment, and people. We are in a national situation now where our regulatory agencies are being decimated. I don't know specifically about the mining OSHA, but I know the EPA is getting decimated, so I have concerns there. But what I'm really concerned is the bigger picture. So we're going to be taking concentrate if you build your mill. That's less trucks. But the trucks have to bring shit up there, excuse my language. The trucks need to go up the road. We have increased traffic on the road just in the last 4 years of employees. Some of them have gotten in accidents. One of them wasn't even licensed to drive a truck. So I'm concerned about that. But what the scenario that concerns me most, I'm a wildland firefighter. And I'm confident that if you guys, in your regulatory, you're going to do your best job at the mill. But what happens when one of your trucks crashes on Caribou and causes a wildfire in a neighborhood where none of the roads can handle the Caribou Road can't handle the recreational traffic right now. My neighborhoods, those roads are inadequate as egress routes. So we have a huge problem with increasing anything up there that concerns me. Now you add a mill, we also have sound. Grinding up rock makes noise. Got news for you. That's going to ruin the character of that entire area. I'm going to hear that from my house every day, and I don't appreciate that. So those are my concerns. Yes, I acknowledge mining is important, but this is an area that is now recreationally intensive. This is in the middle of Nevada, where there's 5 people that are impacted. You guys are playing risks for a large amount of profit, or the majority of it, and bless you if you're going to put money into our economy, but the majority of the money ain't going to stay here. It's going to go to some big corporation somewhere that doesn't benefit us. So those are my concerns, and I appreciate you guys coming and presenting, but I've heard these same arguments on the Navajo Mountain in Virginia. I watched the labor movement get decimated. We're in a right-to-work state. There's no union here for collective bargaining, and that's a huge problem in my eyes if you guys are going to expand big. Thank you for my time. Appreciate it.
Now, I think Brian brought up a lot of those points. I won't be able to reiterate or address all of them, but I want to go back to, I think the invitation on Wild Bear was for everybody. I know I've been up there, and I just want to respond to what was said before. The environment isn't just our future, it's our present as well. And what you said about the concern about the federal regulatory oversight, I think you got a lot of head nods in the room. What I can say is that now the state is taking over a lot of those things. And this administration, the Polis administration, is working very hard with the Colorado Department of Health and Environment, the Department of Natural Resources, all of those things, and we're keeping up on those communication touch points because we have to. That is an imperative. And then what you mentioned around several of the other things, I'm going to let other folks answer as well. So we'll hop to other folks.
I will only speak to the mill in kind of broad strokes because the design, the details, we take that feedback, we take your point about sound, of course. That's going to be something that we're integrating in the design of the mill so that it doesn't make a bunch of sound. That's anybody who's been around any of the oil and gas compressor stations that exist out there. That's a huge concern that they've had to work to deal with. Industry is having to learn to live side by side in quiet communities all the time. We will be integrating that technology into our designs. To touch on the idea of traffic on the roads, one of the challenges that a lot of these mines have had historically, as recreation has gotten bigger and bigger, they are sharing the same roads with a lot of recreation traffic and out-of-towners, right? Tourists who come up to this area. Folks who live near an active mine learn to it's a neighbor and learn to work with it. They can form those relationships, There's a crappy driver, you go up to the mine, you can talk to the mine manager and say, so-and-so ran me off the road. What the hell is that about? You can do that. Tourists don't benefit from that, and that increases the potential for challenges and conflicts. That's part of why we look at things like having an on-site mill. The more things we can do internally within our existing footprint, within our safety and environmental controls there, the less things we have to send out and add to impact on roads or emergency services or wildfire risk. That's one of the big driving forces of the idea of the mill. And I will also just, finally on that point, because the mill is proposed now, we're proposing it in concept to let everybody know it's something we're working towards. This current application, if it's approved, will not be carte blanche approval of a mill. The state has made it very clear to us at the application stage, because we let them know before we even send it to them, we said, we're putting the mill in now. We know we don't have all of the questions answered. We're being very clear. We're doing this because we don't want to surprise our neighbors. We want to be transparent and open about our future plans because we feel that's a better way to operate.
I just want to touch on the regulation piece of it and the various agencies. And not that I don't think that they are important, but I think it's more important that we self-regulate. And I think that if we start, and I see the look on your face, but the reality is, it really does start with us. And as Ben mentioned earlier, the GIR team, the things that they recommended, they were excited about. Now, I can't speak for every company. Prior to me stepping in as CEO and saying yes to this job, I had my own portfolio of businesses that I ran. And I can't tell you the number of times when people would apply and I would come in as a CEO and they would say, yeah, I've heard it all before. Fast forward 5, 10, 15 years later, and for them to thank me for doing things different, I think we got to give leaders the opportunity. Now, if I fail at that, come see me. But all I'm asking for is a chance.
There were a lot of questions in there. I heard two other ones that you mentioned was wildfire and labor. So I just wanted to respond to those as well. I was listening. So first of all, good news or bad news, we are actually not a right-to-work state. It's a myth. We have the Colorado Labor Peace Act. We're not a closed union shop state. We're not a right-to-work state. Actually, there's an in-between there. And the reason that that's important, and the reason I'm mentioning that, is I work very closely with the State Department of Labor. So if we see those concerns coming up around worker mistreatment or not adhering to labor standards, it is different than a right-to-work state where people can just be fired at will, essentially. It is a little different here in Colorado, and where that line is somewhere where I can help fill in those lines for folks. On the wildfire side, I was actually the chair of the Wildfire Manager Reviews Committee, and so as we're having these conversations, I'm so glad you're bringing this up right now. The other thing that we can be doing is coordinating with the Office of Emergency Management at the state level, having those conversations, and hearing that back from you now is just brings that further into focus.
Thank you.
I'll just say one thing in response to the Wild Bear Nature Center. That was an enterprise which was always near and dear to Tom Hendrick's heart since it was created. And my recollection is Tom would always tell me about everything he did with Wild Bear, and it was usually certainly more than once a year, probably several times a year, Tom did something with Wild Bear.
100%. Yes to comment.
Any other questions?
Hi there. My name is Mike Nye. I'm a Netherlands resident. I grew up in Boulder, spent 50 winters in Boulder County, been in Netherlands for around 20. Just for full disclosure, I'm a member of the Planning Commission in the town of Netherlands. I stand here today, not in that capacity, but as a private citizen, just to be clear. I have two questions and observation. The first question is that will all of you here today commit to accepting Jill's invitation to go over to Wild Bear?
Absolutely.
Yes. And I apologize, I got here late. I didn't catch all of your names. Sir, with the nice polo tie, would you?
Glad you like my polo.
Yes. Would you also commit to engaging in dialogue with Jill and Wild Bear?
I think I've got to go back to the office tomorrow down in Lafayette.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the offer.
If not tomorrow, sometime in the near future.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as long as there's something I put
Yes, because this is important. This is really important.
Wild Bear is very, very important.
Yes. Okay. And sir, in the jacket and the shirt?
I've taken my kids to Wild Bear in the past.
All right, great. And great. So my second question is that it's my understanding, I could be wrong here, that there was a letter from the Netherlands Board of Trustees from March 28th that was addressed to the trustees in the mine division, not you directly. But are you aware of this letter? That there were a number of questions, observations and questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
that all of those letters that were sent to the state, we got.
Okay, great. I knew it was a matter of public record. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of them. So my question is about those. So there are varied questions in there, but a lot of those questions are asking the board to have independent oversight of the mining operation. Could you respond to like that general frame of the question, like do you support the letter as it was sent?
So that letter is directed at the Mineland Reclamation Board and the Division of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety. So to be clear, I can't speak for them. They'll have to speak directly to them.
I understand.
We welcome any and all scrutiny. So if they wish to bring in an independent contractor to review data or review designs or be involved in any way, that's their prerogative. They're the enforcers of the law in this regard. They're a very competent office. They have hydrologists and mining engineers and environmental engineers and civil engineers and a whole host of technical people that this is their profession, is to review and provide this oversight. They are independent of us. The only say we have in them is we pay taxes, but otherwise they're a state agency.
Which we all do.
Right. So we don't have power over them.
Thank you for that. My question, I was meaning more in the sense of, will you, as representatives of the mining corporation, commit today, here now, to accepting independent oversight and state publicly that you support this independent oversight?
In terms of, I don't think there's any reason we would reject that if the state saw that was necessary. Again, because
I'm not talking about whether the state says it's necessary. I'm saying that it's you. You're saying that you are environmentally aware, and that's great. That's way better than most mining companies. But I'm asking for a public commitment here to accept and encourage the board to impose this independent oversight.
we would certainly accept it. I just want to caution, we can't speak for them. I don't want to put words in their mouth.
No, but you can speak for the mining corporation, who's what I'm asking. Like, will you be willing to make a statement to the board saying, please, yes, do this?
I think I understand the question. You're asking, are we willing to have an independent oversight board established for the mine? I have no qualms with that, right? And to what Ben shared, if DRMS says this is what we want, okay. If they say it's not what we want and someone says you should have one, okay. You know, at the end of the day, one of the things that we mentioned earlier, is putting together a group made up of residents, employees, so on and so forth, so that we can have these conversations. If independent to me, sometimes DRMS is like an independent oversight board because they are constantly giving us feedback. But yes, we are completely open to that. We don't shy away from that at all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have a reputation for asking hard questions and making hard observations. And thank you for welcoming this, by the way. So there's an elephant in the room, and there is a big trust issue between mining corporation and the community of larger Netherlands. You're aware of this, right? Are you aware of this? That there's a trust issue? It feels like a big trust issue. And this isn't directed at you personally.
I don't know that I fully understand it. I know that there has been a lot of things that have been shared with me. I try my best not to take all of that for truth, especially if I was not a part of it. So if there is something or an elephant that we should address, by all means, please do it.
So there are some of the observations and I can only make observations for myself. My first observation is that, yes, there is a trust issue. You should be aware of that.
And what is it, well, specifically?
The trust issue, that there's a long history between the mine and the town of Netherland. So let me ask this as a question. It's my understanding that there was a lawsuit threatened from the GIR towards the town of Netherland for a very large sum of money. Is that true?
Yes, that is true.
Okay, yes. So there's this atmosphere of fear. That's what I'm saying. So I'm not trying to.
No,
I don't want to rehash the past. This is.
Listen, in order
to,
the only way to establish trust is to have the tough conversations and get on the same page.
I agree.
Okay. Now, can I answer about every person, leaders have their different way in which they handle certain feedback or information. As a business, when you have invested significant sums of money in people, equipment, the community, and you have a lot of shareholders who you're responsible for. If there are falsehoods that are made about your company, you do have the right to sue and recoup those damages. And there were some things that were being said that were not true. And so what was asked of them was to stop. And if you do not stop, we are going to sue to recoup those damages. Now, things stopped. It was never intended, and I can't speak for the person, but it was never intended to be a bully. It was to just simply say, you are damaging and hurting our business, and it is costing jobs and livelihood, and we have the right to recoup those damages. So from a trust perspective, I think that we need to have the conversation. Where did some of those falsehoods come from? And let's have a conversation before they end up spread throughout the community and creating fear.
I completely agree. That was why I wanted to bring up the elephant in the room, that lingers. What was the amount of the lawsuit?
I believe it was 500 million.
500 million.
I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Parking meter money.
Sorry. I didn't hear you.
Parking meter money.
But certainly a lot less than what the company could have potentially lost if the false rumors did not stop.
I understand. So I want to work with the farmers, and I don't really care too much. My sole intention here was to have you aware that there is this elephant in this room, and I have another comment.
I was going to say, and by the way, one of the best uses of the Community Oversight Board for an interchange of ideas is when rumors get started and start to circulate, it's much easier to cut them off at the pass if you've got someone to ask and if there's a trusting interface where you can go to get those questions answered. Because I certainly find out that the old truism that a liar falsehood will run around the planet Earth before the truth puts its pants on. So maybe we could be a little faster on the response.
Yes. And this is why dialogue and continual dialogue and true transparency is critical. May I provide a couple of pieces of feedback to you in the light of transparency?
Sure.
And I'll preface this with saying that there's a sense of fear, right? Coming up here and asking questions, and I've always been a diplomat. I try my best to be neutral and impartial and fair and acknowledge that we're all humans and we all make mistakes. But being greeted at the door, and no disrespect to the Boulder County Sheriff's Office, but walking in this door and having been surrounded by security guards, I got here a little bit late, so there wasn't anybody else. Maybe there was another greeter, but that was like, holy shit! Like, I'm
very glad.
I'm one of the younger people in this room, right?
Very glad you brought that up.
This is just an observation.
No, I'm very glad you brought that up. And so the reason why we engaged security and officers, because there were threats that were made. And so out of an abundance of caution, we live in a day and age where people take their passion out in various ways. Look, I'm not going to use examples, but we see it happening all around the country where their disagreement turns into physical or manifesting through fire or destruction. Absolutely. And so unfortunately, through some intelligence within the last 48 hours, we were very disappointed to learn that there was a group considering coming and creating some havoc. And so unfortunately, yes, we had to bring in to keep not just our team safe, but all of you safe as well. Because had that happened, I would have not forgiven myself if I would have ignored the information that was presented to me.
So I'm a pacifist. I don't believe in any form of violence. I understand that context.
I don't either. And we would have never, to be honest, we just wouldn't even have thought that it would have been needed for this conversation.
Yes. So, and that makes it harder for me to come up and honestly express my concerns. And I understand safety is also paramount. My second piece of feedback and observation here is that, so you're talking about transparency and openness, and I say this knowing that mistakes happen, and this kind of goes back to the very first person to speak about Mill. So in the letter that was sent out here, is one place that states, and it's talking about the permit application, and it says, no new mill. I knew that wasn't the case, and about a page later in the letter, it talks more extensively about the possibility of building a new mill in the future. My feedback to you is that, one, there's a contradiction in this 4-page letter. You need to be extremely careful with the details that you release. If you want to rebuild trust.
Fair enough. So it was definitely a mistake in usage of language. There were concerns that there was a mill operating, that we did it without approval. So we don't have a new mill, but we want to have a mill.
Yes.
We should have been much clearer.
Understood.
I received that. Thank you.
Understood. I think my very last question, as I say this is being recorded, is that, and I don't know who is the owner of the recording. Is it GIR? Or
It is us. It is us.
Would you commit to releasing this publicly on YouTube or something else that's equally accessible so that everybody else can see what's been talked about today?
That is definitely one of the intentions of the video. We wanted to show, in the event that no one showed up, that it wasn't for lack of communicating or trying, but absolutely.
Okay, so absolutely yes, you'll release the video. Great. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you. You do ask tough questions, but I appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Angelia Sardonakis. I'm here, I'm on the board of both Teens Inc., which is a local nonprofit, and the Peak to Peak Chamber of Commerce. And kind of similar to what Jill was talking about and what I was asking you to commit to, will you commit to engaging with both of those important organizations for our community?
Is Nick on the board?
Yes.
Okay, so I have spoken to Nick and we are well on our way to getting involved.
Awesome.
So absolutely.
And are you also familiar with Teens Inc.?
I don't know that I am or if anyone else is, but I'm happy to get information on it before we depart.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Excellent. Very welcome.
No, I don't need to be doing an infomercial for Teens Inc. with the cameras on, but no, when I worked in casework and worked also in truancy and delinquency court, Teens Inc. is a remarkable organization that actually serves to help our youth and ensure that they don't enter those systems in the first place, which is good for their lives and also saves taxpayer dollars at the same time. So wonderful, remarkable organization. Can't wait for Tony Hawk to come back up here. But in all seriousness, I also, some of the work we do with the Boulder Chamber, we could be actually partnering on some things as we look to introduce our workforce into apprenticeships. So I look forward to those conversations.
Hi there, my name is Luke Miller, and I am a Netherlands native and Boulder and Netherlands resident for most of my life. And that echo a little bit of Mike Dye's sentiment. Full disclosure, I'm a member of the Board of Trustees of the town, and I'm not here in that capacity tonight, just as a citizen, but thank you, Mike, for that little intro tidbit. And actually, I appreciate you bringing up the letter from the Board of Trustees, because I know we intentionally did not file an objection as the town. That was a decision we made to just send a letter, collectively with a lot of questions, and there were people who weren't comfortable submitting their own personal comment on the mining applications. We tried to incorporate a lot of people's feedback into our main letter from the town. And I think it'd be great if you guys could at some point address some of the points and questions and concerns in that letter. I think that'd be a real meaningful thing to do. I'd also like to give you guys some credit. I go up and down Caribou Road a lot as a recreationalist, and you guys plow the road in the winter, and I have to say that, all the employees from the mine that I've encountered up and down the road over the years are good folks. They'll help pull somebody out of the ditch, they'll help you jumpstart a dead car. It's not to say everything is great, but there has been some good will, and that's how I want to give you guys a credit. And I really appreciate you guys coming up here, and I think you've been really well spoken. Unfortunately, I missed the full presentation, so I'm just kind of catching up on the comments. But the main one I wanted to bring up was, if you could give a response to the board, we really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Part of the process with the state of Colorado is we're required to address every objection or comment letter that comes in. So the town of Netherland can look forward to a letter specifically addressing the items in their letter. Undoubtedly, you're aware those overlap with a lot of other people's questions. And as I went through that letter as part of my process, I noted that I saw some of those and thought, even if Netherland didn't ask that question, the state was going to ask that question. So I think you can take a great deal of confidence in that those topics are going to get addressed by us in detail. And we look forward to continuing a collaborative process with the town because that feedback is really valuable and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Layla Bly. I've been living in Netherland for almost 30 years. I also serve on the Teens Inc. board. And we are in the process of trying to build a preschool right now, right at the bottom of Caribou Road. And we've had all these environmental studies done. Everything shows that everything's great right now. And so, we're moving forward. But I just want to make sure that, we're doing this so that we don't lose families in our community that have had to move because there's no affordable childcare up here. So that's our focus. But also a concern would be, there's been stories about copper level was too high, or, I'm sorry, I don't have the specifics, but, how do we get assurances that these things won't happen in the future when we have a bunch of little kids at the bottom of the road that are much more susceptible to these, minerals than we are as adults?
Yeah. So I'm going to comment, but I'm going to let Ben get into the technical aspects of this. The first thing that I definitely do want to clear up is that the water quality issues did not impact drinking water. It's really important that we share that because that was a big misconception. Not that it was okay that there were exceedances at all, but it was at the aquatic life standards. We care about the aquatic life too. And we got it right, and we fixed it, and we haven't had any issues since. So I do want to make sure that everyone in this room, when you hear people saying that we contaminated drinking water, that is not true. And those are the sort of things that can really hurt your business. Second, I was not aware of the preschool, and I'm actually very happy that you shared that with me. I have a business in Louisville that is right next door to a preschool, and we had our ups and downs with learning about that particular business. Now that we understand that, we will be very, very mindful. I have 2 grandchildren, actually 3, but 2 that I have full custody of, 2 and 3 years old. I would never do anything to put anybody's child in harm's way. So I really do appreciate you sharing that, and that is some feedback that we'll take back to the team. Not that I have any concerns that there are any issues with what will happen up on the hill, but I do want to understand how the traffic to and from and our staff can be supportive with what you have going on.
To speak to the technical specifics, the way environmental protection works in America in general and in Colorado specifically is sort of a series of barriers. At the first initial starting point, there is the design and execution of the handling systems for, say, water protection. Those are inspected and reviewed internally by the company. And they're inspected and reviewed by state regulators. And then periodically they get additional review via the federal government. And the state inspectors have to demonstrate to the federal inspectors that they're doing their inspections right. So there's these layers of regulation and inspection and monitoring. One of the most important things for a mine like this is that they that their water that's coming out is being consistently sampled, sent to a lab, and tested appropriately. Well, in addition to that, the lab is tested by the EPA to make sure the lab is doing a good job. So there's all of these layers and such that exist in place with the whole goal of ensuring that we are not creating environmental problems downstream for our neighbors and our community.
Thank you. I was just given notice that it is now 8 p.m. So we have hit our time, and we do want to be respectful to the Caribou Room because that is the amount of time that they have allotted us.
However, if you did not get an opportunity to answer or ask a question, as we shared earlier, there are Post-it notes for ideas in the back, and there are index cards for your questions. Please put your contact information down. We will answer every single one.
Thank you. I'll make it quick. Can I ask a question? My name is Matt Phillips. I more or less live in Eldora, and up 4th of July, I'm president of our homeowners group of 4th of July, but I do not speaking on their behalf. But I want to ask about Boulder County's role. I lived in Eldora in, say, roughly for the last 40 years, and in the early 90s, the mine opened across the valley from where I was living. And the people in Eldora got very upset about the mine opening. Back then, as I understand it, mining was a use by right. Sir John, I believe you may have been at those hearings in Boulder.
Mining was used by right of the forestry zone until I think 1997. Mining was used by right. Now it's a use by special review.
And that's where I want to go with this conversation. And I should keep it short, but that was a rough experience living across the valley from that mining operation, which you all are not part of. In my opinion, it's not your fault. But that was a noisy, house-vibrating experience.
That was the mobile mine, correct?
Yes. And I know Tom went to those hearings, but the people in Eldora, they fought the ski area on certain things that they thought were going to have an impact on the town of Eldora. They fought the mining operation. They got the zoning changed regarding mining to what I understand to be, correct me if I'm wrong, a use by special review.
The mine, the Cross Caribou Mine, has already gone through that process once. Even though Tom was grandfathered under the 1997 regulations, Tom voluntarily went through the special use process, I believe, in 2008. That is not to say that at some point in the future we may need to amend that, but we did go voluntarily through that process 17 years ago, which was reasonably extensive.
Thank you. And I'll never forget Tom at those meetings. He was so upset. But my question is, an expansion of a use, will that trigger a county review process? And as I see the county, I've been living here a long time, they want to mitigate impacts. It's all about impacts when there's a development. And my direct question is, will an expansion of this use, which in my opinion is what's being talked about here, and solely what's being talked about here, and the impacts of that, will that trigger that additional review process with Boulder County?
I couldn't speak to that at this moment, but I will say one of the things that I think Ben tried to emphasize tonight is that the mine footprint is essentially remaining the same, and it's underground, which doesn't involve surface impact that will ultimately expand. There is not an expansion of the actual active mining footprint from 9.9 acres to 204 acres. There may be some actual operations within that 204 if they get involved, for example, in a drilling or exploration operation, which has to be permitted, or a dump removal project, which usually requires a reclamation-only permit. And that would only take place as the dumps where there was potentially both contamination or economic ore present that could be processed during the current day. But the mine footprint, as far as what you can see on the surface, is pretty much what it always was. And it was the state that insisted to go through DMO. I was there back when those regulations were written. Actually, that state law, Tom and I were both on the negotiating committee. And the DMO statute was only supposed to apply to situations where there was a potential for acid mine drainage, or the use of cyanide, or the use of toxic or hazardous chemicals at the mine site. And that did not impact us, but over the course of 30 years, as Ben said, the regulations evolved so that they actually requested that we become a designated mining operation, DMO. But As far as what is going to change, not a lot.
And I'm not trying to bully you into describing the changes, but it's my simplistic view is we're here because there is, as I'm reading it, an expansion from roughly 10 acres to roughly 200 acres, which, again, and I'll make this brief, seems like an expansion of a use that's no longer a use by right, it's a use by special review. And I would think, from my brain, is thinking this is going to involve a meeting with Boulder County Land Use and the Boulder County Commissioners, where the entire community will have an opportunity to try to, talk about the impacts of the operation. I'm not trying to make trouble here.
Yeah, in terms of the use by review, John's laid out how that works, and this has a use by review approval on it already. So anything that is an expansion of it through Boulder County, it'll have to go through that process in a modern form. To kind of your question and concern about expansion, I know is shared by a lot of people. So try this analogy on for size. Let's say you have your house on a lot, and you also own the lot next door and the lot behind it. And the county comes to you and says, we've updated our code, our zoning code. You can't have these lots like this separate. Well, you're saying, I'm not changing my house, I'm not doing anything different. They say, no, we just want you to file a lot consolidation to put it all together in one lot. Okay, fine, you go through that. Nothing in your house has changed, nothing on the ground has changed, but you've drawn a new, bigger line around everything you control. That's what we've done here. The state came to us and said, we want you to convert this to a DMO. We want you to wrap in everything that you control and is your responsibility in this area. We said, well, okay, we're going to draw this bigger boundary on the map to do that. And then we were clear with them in our application, in the steps, we don't have anything to expand. Our house is the same. We don't need a bigger one. But they were clear, no, there's whether it's the old pre-law piles or roads, they said get it all, have everything in there so that it's all in one big boundary, one big lot.
Well, thank you for that, for your words. It was my impression that the operation was expanding. Potentially the mill could be considered an expansion of a use, which would trigger this public review process at the county level, where citizens can once again go and bring their concerns in a county review and approval process relative to the impacts that people are concerned about. So thank you for answering my question.
Very, very welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're going to wrap up. Thank you so very much, everybody.
How are you? I'm good. You still at the museum? Yeah, off. Right. Yeah, I forget it's not year round. I've seen people like looking in on the weekends. They go to visit. Yeah. But I started with the County again on April 30th. And we don't open until the first week of June. Oh, wow. This year. So it's June to like September? Until the end of October. Yeah. I'm always gone.
We hope you enjoyed this special broadcast brought to you by the Mountaineer Podcast, which will resume its regularly scheduled programming very soon.
And that's it for our show. Subscribe online to get more access to more news, weekly updates to our community calendar, and a link to our YouTube channel by visiting themountaineer.com. Be sure to use the coupon code PODCAST when subscribing for a 10% discount, only available to our listeners. If you are in the local Peak-to-Peak area, be sure to pick up a print edition of The Mountaineer at a local business. I'm Dango Rose. Thank you for listening.